Ginjo is a bad guy, but then he's a good guy. But then he's a bad guy again. But then he's a good guy again. Wait, he's actually a bad guy, I think. He's like one of those Russian dolls where you just keep finding layers and layers of conflicting moral values the deeper you dig. Having said that, he's not really a complex character. When he feels betrayed by the Soul Society, he's subjectively bad, and when he's under the influence of Book of the End, he's subjectively good. Don't get me wrong, he definitely lives up to his status as antagonist of the arc. He's conniving and vindictive, but in spite of that, he is quite clumsy in the execution of his agenda. Addressing our protagonist as Ichigo when he's on his side and Kurosaki when he's not is a verbal tick that he doesn't even seem to be aware of. In essence, he's super straightforward to the point of coming off as simple-minded. Constructing a diabolic plan and not having the poker face to follow through is the reason why he subjects himself to the mental manipulation of Tsukishima's Fullbring. And this is done very deliberately by Kubo. He is a flawed character, a comically tactless villain, which is also what makes him very grounded and relatable. Not everyone can be an Aizen. Ginjo isn't motivated by this grandiose, larger-than-life ambition. He's not trying to usurp the Soul King, and he's not trying to restructure the world as we know it. He's just a fugitive trying to survive. So today we're going to look into his relationship with the Shinigami and how it got to be so irreparably damaged. I think the manga is somewhat vague about the motives behind his hostility to the Soul Society. Evidently, Soul Society is very adamant about his status as a criminal. Soifon regards him as something of a wretched traitor for killing several Shinigami, which I think is a good representation of how he's perceived. Toshiro even admits to Rukia that using his crimes as a catalyst, majority of the captains reached a consensus to use the next substitute Shinigami as bait for Ginjo and exterminate them both in one go. Just scrap the whole system altogether. Of course, prior to this decision, they couldn't have foreseen that Ichigo would turn out to be such an invaluable and trustworthy ally, which is why they entrust Ichigo with the decision. One that would potentially sever his relationship with them once he had Ginjo's full story, but one they owed to him as their savior nonetheless. If we are to believe the Soul Society's version of events, Ginjo's reasoning is pretty tame and unjustified as a motive in my opinion. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. On surface level, it seems like he's saying, the Soul Society used the badge to monitor me and control my spiritual pressure. They're not the government, they can't spy on me, I'm fed up with this shit, I'm gonna kill a bunch of Shinigami. Murder is a very theatrical reaction to being spied on, and Ginjo doesn't strike me as being that melodramatic. Sure, his feelings may have been hurt that they do it all sneaky behind his back, but he's not an emo, self-absorbed kid. Supervising the actions of someone you've lent your authority to as an organization makes sense. It's something you would expect him to protest but begrudgingly get behind if that's all they were up to. So right off the bat, something clearly isn't right. There's a blatant disconnect between the Soul Society and Ginjo's version of events. And this is why even though his words to Ichigo are quite superficial, you can tell that there's a lot more to the story. He said something really interesting in chapter 474. Their aim is to monitor and control us so they can use us as the Soul Society's pawns, and this is the interesting part, and kill us if we resist them. Now this is not a demonization of the Soul Society based on a wild presumption, but rather a recounting of Ginjo's actual experience. And the novel Can't Fear Your Own World gives us some much needed context into the whole Ginjo betrayal saga. The Tsunaashiro family, the clan that supposedly takes precedence over the other noble clans, was obsessed with the Soul King's parts. As if inheriting their ancestors' distrusting nature, they made a habit of collecting fragments of the Soul King. If you're wondering about this ancestor, I've covered this topic before in a whole other video, so I'm not gonna get too much into it right now, but I will be leaving the link in the description if you wanna get a bit more background. For the purposes of this video, what I will say is that the Tsunaashiro family were very furtive by nature. Over the years, they'd undertaken multiple covert operations to retrieve the Soul King's parts. Not even the other noble families were aware of the nature of their clandestine activities because as the clan in charge of the visuals department, basically the surveillance system of the world, they made sure to cover their tracks. By the way, this is the same visuals department that located Rukia when she was in the world of the living. It's revealed in the novel that every Fullbringer possesses a fragment of the Soul King. It's what attracts Hollows to attack them from even as early as the time they're in their mother's wombs. So when Ginjo showed up as a substitute Shinigami, they saw in him an opportunity. Under the influence of the Tsunaashiro clan, the Central 46 ordered Ukitake to bug the substitute badge. We still don't know the circumstances that led Ginjo to becoming a substitute Shinigami, but if there's one thing that's certain, it's that there was clearly a level of trust between him and Ukitake, demonstrated very clearly when Ukitake protests the underhanded surveillance of Ginjo. Granted, there was no way he was gonna get the Central 46 or the noble clan to reverse their ruling. I mean, presumably he didn't even know about the Tsunayashiro family's involvement, much less their intentions. Brandishing their absolute authority, the Central 46 forced him to acquiesce to their instructions, after which he reluctantly handed Ginjo a wiretapped combat pass. But even as he did so, he expressed in no uncertain terms his unwavering confidence in Ginjo's loyalty. He fully expected Ginjo to disprove the need for surveillance through his everyday conduct, something he makes abundantly clear to the Soul Society's hierarchy. And this is basically the crux of the Tsunayashiro's plan. Having acquired the means to track Ginjo, they bided their time for what they thought was inevitable: the discovery of other Fullbringers possessing the Soul King's fragments. Ginjo unknowingly plays into their hands when he gathers several Fullbringers to relieve them of their unwanted powers. In chapter 433, he told the story of his comrades transferring their Fullbrings to a human with Shinigami powers. At the time, it was a story tweaked by Tsukishima's Book of the End, but it wasn't entirely untrue. Michibane Ora, possibly the most overpowered character in the novel, recalls a conversation she had with her father where he speaks of finally finding a person to whom he could relinquish his Fullbring powers, and the person he mentioned was Ginjo. Now, when all the Fullbringers who detested their powers had convened around Ginjo, the Tsunayashiro family inconspicuously took action. They saw their chance to retrieve the Soul King's fragments and sent in assassins to ambush Ginjo and his comrades. Obviously, Ginjo, oblivious to the undercover factions within the Soul Society, viewed the slaughter of his comrades as an unwarranted act of betrayal against him, and so he retaliated in kind. It was then that he deduced the invasive nature of his combat pass and attributed the murder of his friends to the person who handed it to him. So this was the first part of the misunderstanding that turned him against Ukitake and the Soul Society at large. But having accomplished their goal of collecting the Soul King's fragments, the Tsunayashiro family still had to tie up some loose ends. The one outlier in their plan was the survival of Ginjo, who could conceivably expose them by telling his side of the story. So it was up to Tokinada, a member of their branch family and former classmate of Ukitake, to rock the boat, so to speak. He approached Ukitake with a fabricated story. According to him, Ginjo had spontaneously lost his mind and in a moment of madness killed a messenger Shinigami together with his own human friends. To corroborate this story, he tinkered with the data from the visuals department to paint the picture that Ginjo was guilty. Now, presented with this quote-unquote evidence, Ukitake was absolutely shell-shocked. Perhaps he suspected foul play because the next thing he did was send his own trusted subordinates to the world of the living, believing that Ginjo would be more receptive to a friendly face. However, what Ukitake did not know was that to Ginjo he was no longer a trustworthy peace-loving ally, but rather a target for revenge and indignation. In a fit of rage, Ginjo killed Ukitake's subordinates and went into hiding, and thus the masterstroke that was Tokinada's interference was complete. Ginjo was branded a criminal who fled after killing several Shinigami unprovoked, and the Soul Society was forever a treacherous enemy in his eyes. Ginjo and Ukitake were simply tragic victims of a misunderstanding orchestrated by the Tsunayashiro clan. By the time Ukitake found out the truth, the damage was already done and there was no turning back, and that's the story of the first substitute Shinigami, Kugo Ginjo. I will admit I was kinda hoping for a bit more background to his story. We still don't know how he managed to become a Shinigami or even how he evaded the Soul Society for so long. In the manga, it stated that Execution's base of operations was in Naruki City, so just adjacent to Karakura town. And based on the events of Everything But the Rain, that should be under the 10th Division's jurisdiction. Interestingly, after his death, it's revealed that Ukitake was constantly supplicating for leniency on his behalf in the event that Ginjo attacked him in Soul Society. Ukitake anticipated that Ginjo would try to exact revenge upon him, and he was willing to shoulder the responsibility of his crimes as atonement for the Tsunayashiro's actions. If we knew all of this background, I think his death would have been a bit more impactful. I'm not saying it wasn't per se, it's just hard to sympathize with the character with the vaguest of motivations, even if he does narratively mirror our protagonist. Ginjo broke Ichigo. It was very visceral and invasive, and undoubtedly the most poignant and expressive that we've seen Ichigo to date. So even though his death significantly evoked empathy from Ichigo, without a proper backstory, the reaction from the readers was always going to be watered down. In a different timeline, I could see them getting along as fellow substitute Shinigami. At the very least, when they're cordial, there's a very interesting dynamic between them, with Ginjo often coming across as a big brother messing with his little bro half the time they interact. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. I swear every villain in Bleach is just a product of the noble families and their whimsical desires. Lately I've been focusing a lot on the events of the novel, so I'd love to get some feedback. I might do a couple more before I switch to exclusive manga content, so give this video a like if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, stay safe. Peace.